An emotional, spiritual style message written as symbolic entertainment, not a prediction of an actual death or tragedy. Something happened last night. You may not be able to explain it yet. Maybe you woke up suddenly for no obvious reason. Maybe you had an unusually vivid dream. Maybe you felt a strange heaviness in your heart, an unexpected wave of emotion, or the powerful sense that someone, somewhere, was thinking about you. Maybe you simply opened your eyes this morning and felt different. There are moments that arrive quietly. They do not knock on the door. They do not announce themselves. They simply enter your awareness and leave you wondering why your heart suddenly feels as though it remembers something your mind cannot explain. This message is for that moment. It is for the person who has been wondering whether love can exist before two people finally meet. It is for the person who believes that some connection seems strangely familiar, as though two souls can recognize a feeling before two lives recognize each other. And it is for the person who has recently felt that something in their emotional world is changing. But before you continue, remember something important. The words "die tragically" in this message are symbolic. They do not mean that a real person is destined to die. They represent the possible ending of an old chapter, an old pattern, an old version of love, or an opportunity that could disappear if it is continually ignored. You do not have supernatural responsibility for keeping another human being alive. You do not need to be afraid. You do not need to panic. You do not need to search for someone because you believe something terrible is about to happen. Instead, allow this message to speak about something much more human, the fear of losing a meaningful connection before you ever get the chance to experience it. Because sometimes the greatest tragedy in love is not death, sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is hesitation. Sometimes it is two people who could have changed each other's lives but remained strangers because neither one was brave enough to take the first step, and perhaps that is what your heart has been trying to tell you. Something happened last night. Last night may have felt ordinary. The world continued moving. People went to sleep. Cars traveled through streets. Lights disappeared from windows. Messages were sent. Messages were left unanswered. And somewhere, someone may have been thinking about the future without realizing that their life was slowly approaching a new chapter. You may have been doing the same. Perhaps you were lying in bed thinking about someone. Perhaps you were thinking about nobody in particular. Perhaps you were remembering a person from your past. Perhaps you were imagining someone you have never met, and then, for a brief moment, something shifted. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was simply a feeling. But the feeling stayed. That is what matters. Not because the feeling proves that something supernatural happened, but because emotions often reveal what our conscious minds have been too distracted to notice. You can spend an entire day pretending that you do not care about something. Then nighttime arrives. The noise disappears. The phone becomes quiet. The room becomes still. And suddenly, the feelings you pushed aside during the day become impossible to ignore. That is when the heart speaks, not always in words. Sometimes it speaks through longing, sometimes through nostalgia, sometimes through curiosity, sometimes through the strange desire to reconnect with somebody. And sometimes through the realization that you are ready for something you were not ready for before. Maybe last night represented that moment for you. A turning point, a quiet internal awakening, a reminder that your emotional life is not finished. There are still people you have not met, conversations you have not had, places you have not visited, memories you have not created, and possibilities you cannot see yet. Your story is still unfolding, the soulmate you have not met yet. The word soulmate can sound mysterious. People often imagine that a soulmate is one perfect person somewhere in the world, waiting for the exact right moment to appear. Real life is more complicated, and more beautiful, than that. A soulmate can be understood as someone with whom you share an unusually meaningful connection. It can be romantic. It can be a friendship. It can be someone who teaches you something important. It can even be a person who enters your life for a short period but leaves you changed forever. So when this message says your soulmate, think of it as a symbol for a deeply meaningful connection. Someone whose presence could matter. Someone who might see a side of you that other people overlook. Someone who could challenge you to grow. Someone who could make ordinary conversations feel unexpectedly important. Someone who could remind you that being understood is different from simply being noticed. That person does not need to be perfect. Neither do you. A meaningful connection is not created by perfection. It is created by honesty, by kindness, by mutual respect, by communication, by patience, by the willingness to learn another person's world without trying to control it. Your future soulmate does not need you to rescue them. They do not need you to predict their future. They do not need you to become someone else. And you do not need to carry the responsibility of saving them from an imaginary tragedy. What they may need, just as you may need, is someone willing to show up with sincerity. The death of an opportunity. There is another meaning hidden inside the dramatic title. Sometimes an opportunity can die. Not literally, symbolically. A conversation that never happens can disappear. A friendship that is never nurtured can fade. A dream that is continually postponed can become distant. A chance to apologize can pass. A chance to say I appreciate you can be missed. A person can move into a new chapter of their life. And suddenly, the moment that once seemed available is no longer available in the same way. That is why the title speaks about having the power to stop it. Your power is not supernatural. Your power is ordinary. And ordinary power can be extraordinary. You can choose courage instead of endless hesitation. You can choose honesty instead of pretending. You can choose kindness instead of cruelty. You can choose communication instead of guessing. You can choose to appreciate people while they are in your life. You can choose to stop waiting for perfect circumstances. You can choose to become the kind of person who notices opportunities before they disappear. That is the real message, what your heart may be trying to tell you. Perhaps you have been protecting yourself. Maybe something happened before that made you afraid of trusting people. Maybe someone disappointed you. Maybe someone left. Maybe you cared more than the other person did. Maybe you experienced a friendship that suddenly changed. Maybe you have watched other people experience relationships and wondered when your own story would begin. You might even have convinced yourself that you do not need anyone. Sometimes saying I don't care is easier than admitting I care deeply, and I am afraid of being hurt. But vulnerability is not weakness, it is simply honesty about the fact that relationships matter. The person who eventually becomes important in your life may not arrive dramatically, they may not appear beneath fireworks, they may not have a magical entrance, they may simply become part of your ordinary world, a conversation, a joke, a shared interest, a school project, a hobby, a mutual friend, a random introduction. A moment when you discover that somebody understands something you thought nobody understood. And then, gradually, the ordinary becomes meaningful. That is how many real connections begin, quietly, naturally, without a prophecy, without a countdown, without fear. Do not chase fear. If this message gives you chills, take a breath. You do not have to interpret those chills as a warning. Human beings are incredibly good at finding meaning in emotionally powerful experiences. A dramatic dream can feel like a prediction. A coincidence can feel like destiny. A familiar song can suddenly feel like a message. A name appearing twice can feel impossible. But emotions are not evidence of future events. If you think about someone and then receive a message from them, it can feel magical. Enjoy the coincidence. Let it make you smile. But you do not need to build a frightening story around it. Your future is not a trap waiting to happen. You are allowed to live it one moment at a time. And if someone you care about is actually in danger in real life, the right response is not a spiritual prediction. It is to tell a trusted adult or contact appropriate emergency help. Love should make you more grounded, not more frightened. The person who is thinking about you, maybe somewhere in the world there is someone who will eventually become important to you. Right now, they may be living a completely separate life. They may be studying, working, laughing with friends, learning from mistakes, discovering their interests, trying to understand themselves. They may not know your name, you may not know theirs, and that is okay. You do not have to find them today. You do not have to force a meeting. You do not have to interpret every stranger as the one. Let life introduce people naturally. The most meaningful connections cannot be forced into existence. They develop through time, through shared experiences, through mutual choice, through trust. Imagine that future person not as someone you must save, but as someone you will eventually meet as an equal, someone with their own dreams, their own fears, their own imperfections, their own story. You are not responsible for completing them. They are not responsible for completing you. A healthy connection is not two incomplete people desperately trying to become one. It is two people who can remain themselves while caring deeply about each other. That distinction matters. Your power is choice. Perhaps the most important sentence in this entire message is this: you have the power to choose what kind of person you become. You can choose to be someone who notices people, someone who listens, someone who apologizes, someone who says thank you, someone who does not intentionally hurt others, someone who asks questions instead of assuming, someone who respects boundaries. Someone who understands that affection cannot be demanded, someone who recognizes that another person is allowed to say no, someone who understands that real love requires freedom. These choices may seem small, but small choices shape entire lives. A kind word can change someone's afternoon. A sincere apology can repair trust. A supportive message can remind somebody that they are not invisible. A conversation can create a friendship. A friendship can introduce you to an entirely new part of yourself, and sometimes, years later, you look back and realize that one tiny decision mattered more than you knew at the time. That is the power you actually possess, not the power to control fate. The power to participate in your own life. There is no countdown. Forget the imaginary clock. There is no countdown hanging above your head. There is no secret deadline telling you that your soulmate will disappear unless you perform some special action tonight. There is no cosmic punishment waiting because you missed a sign. You are not required to decode the universe perfectly. You are not failing because you do not know what happens next. You are allowed to be young. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to discover who you are before worrying about who you will love. In fact, learning who you are is one of the most valuable things you can do. Because when meaningful relationships eventually appear, self-understanding helps you recognize what healthy connection actually looks like. You begin to understand the difference between attention and respect, between excitement and compatibility, between obsession and genuine care, between pressure and affection, between someone wanting to control you and someone wanting to understand you. Those differences matter. The message behind the message may be the real message from last night was not about your soulmate at all. Maybe it was about you. Maybe some part of you is ready to stop living entirely in the past. Maybe you are ready to forgive yourself for something. Maybe you are ready to stop assuming that every disappointment predicts your future. Maybe you are ready to believe that your life can contain good surprises. Maybe you are ready to let people know when they matter. Maybe you are ready to become more open, not recklessly open, not blindly trusting, just willing to let life happen. There is a difference. You can have boundaries and still have a soft heart. You can be cautious and still be hopeful. You can protect yourself without building walls around every part of yourself. You can care about people without becoming responsible for everything they feel. You can love without losing yourself. That is the kind of strength worth developing. If you are waiting for a sign, here is your sign. Do not wait for a supernatural emergency. Instead, pay attention to ordinary opportunities. If you have been meaning to thank someone, thank them. If you owe someone a sincere apology, consider making it. If a friendship matters to you, treat it with care. If you want to develop a talent, practice. If you have a dream, take one small step. If you feel lonely, reach out to someone trustworthy. If you are confused about another person's feelings, communicate respectfully instead of trying to read their mind. If someone repeatedly makes you uncomfortable or ignores your boundaries, step back. If somebody respects you, notice that. If you make a mistake, learn from it. These are real signs, not because the universe is secretly controlling everything, but because your choices create possibilities. The night may have changed something. Perhaps nothing external changed last night. Perhaps your world looks exactly the same. Same room, same walls, same phone, same routine, same people, but perhaps something inside you shifted. Sometimes transformation begins before circumstances change. First comes awareness, then comes a decision, then comes action, and eventually, the outside world begins to look different because you are interacting with it differently. That may be the real mystery you felt, not that someone was destined for tragedy, but that some part of you was ready to wake up. Your future connection will not need fear. A healthy soulmate connection should not depend on frightening you. It should not demand that you prove your love by doing something dangerous. It should not tell you that something terrible will happen unless you obey. It should not isolate you from friends or family. It should not pressure you into secrets. It should not make you feel trapped. It should not require you to give up your values. It should not make you constantly afraid of losing the other person. Healthy affection has room to breathe. It includes respect. It includes boundaries. It includes laughter. It includes ordinary days. It includes disagreements that can be handled respectfully. It includes two people who remain individual human beings. So if someone ever tells you that you must do something frightening because destiny demands it, step back. Fear is not proof of love. Pressure is not proof of love. Control is not proof of love. Respect is. Maybe you have already met them. There is another possibility. Maybe the person represented by this message is not someone you will meet years from now. Maybe they are already somewhere in your life, a classmate, a friend, a teammate, someone you have spoken to only once. Someone you have not noticed yet, but don't turn this into a hunt. Do not start assigning destiny to every person around you. Instead, remain open to getting to know people naturally. Let personalities reveal themselves over time. Notice who makes you feel respected. Notice who listens. Notice who encourages healthy choices. Notice who respects your boundaries. Notice who can celebrate your success without becoming jealous. Notice who can disagree without becoming cruel. These qualities tell you far more about meaningful connection than a mysterious coincidence ever could. What if you are afraid of losing someone? Then acknowledge the feeling. You do not have to turn it into a prediction. Fear of loss is part of caring, but fear becomes unhealthy when it convinces you that you must control everything. You cannot control every event. You cannot guarantee that everyone will stay. You cannot know every future outcome. And that uncertainty is part of being human. What you can control is how you treat people today. Be present, listen, be kind, speak honestly, enjoy the moments you actually have. That is enough. You do not have to turn every moment into a desperate attempt to preserve it forever. Some moments are beautiful precisely because they happen naturally. The person you are becoming. Perhaps the most beautiful part of the soulmate idea is not finding another person, it is becoming someone capable of participating in a healthy relationship. That means learning patience, learning communication, learning emotional responsibility, learning when to speak, learning when to listen, learning how to disagree, learning how to accept rejection without bitterness, learning how to apologize without excuses, learning how to receive an apology without forgetting your boundaries, learning how to celebrate someone else's happiness, learning how to maintain your own identity, learning how to say, I care about you, without saying, you belong to me. These are not glamorous lessons, but they are powerful, and they prepare you for the kind of connection that lasts, the tragedy we can actually prevent. If the dramatic title has one lesson, let it be this: we cannot prevent every tragedy, but we can prevent some unnecessary forms of emotional loss. We can stop assuming that people know we appreciate them. We can stop treating kindness as something that can wait forever. We can stop allowing pride to control every conversation. We can stop pretending that vulnerability is embarrassing. We can stop confusing silence with strength. We can stop expecting people to read our minds. And we can stop believing that love must be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes love looks incredibly ordinary. It looks like remembering someone's favorite joke. It looks like checking whether a friend got home safely. It looks like listening when someone needs to talk. It looks like respecting a boundary without taking it personally. It looks like giving somebody space. It looks like cheering for someone else's achievement. It looks like being honest. It looks like being there. That is the kind of magic worth believing in. If you feel something strong right now, take a moment. Put the phone down for a few seconds. Take a slow breath. Look around your room. Notice where you are. Notice the ordinary details. You are here. You are safe in this moment. Your future has not been written in a mysterious message. You have time. You can make choices. You can learn. You can grow. You can meet people. You can lose people. You can begin again. Your story is not controlled by a title on a page. And your soulmate, whoever that person eventually turns out to be, is not a fragile character whose fate depends on you solving a hidden puzzle. They are a human being. You are a human being.